Marcus Elowin was 39 years old, and for 11 years he had been the ground beneath his wife's feet. The kind of ground you never think about until it shifts. He drove a 2014 Silverado with a dented rear bumper. He kept his work boots by the front door. Her friends called him Quiet Marcus, and she laughed along with them at dinner parties like the name was a compliment she hadn't chosen to correct. To the world, he was a facilities maintenance supervisor for a mid-size property management firm. Respectable enough, unremarkable enough, easily dismissed. She had stopped asking about his workday sometime around year 4. By year 7, she had stopped pretending she would. What she did not know, what she could not have known because she had never thought to ask, was that the firm he supervised for was partly his. Had been since year 2. The second phone in his desk drawer had a different area code and a different name on the account, and every Friday afternoon a deposit of $6. $200 cleared into a savings account in Memphis she had never seen the inside of. Then came a Tuesday in October when Marcus came home and found a key on the kitchen counter that was not his. It sat there like a sentence waiting to be finished. He picked it up, turned it over in his palm, and set it back down in exactly the same position. He did not say a word. By Friday of that same week, he understood that $213,000 of the money he had quietly poured into their joint life. The renovations, the vacations she posted about, the car she drove, the wardrobe she built, had been flowing toward a future that did not include him. What Delia never calculated, not once in 11 years of marriage, was that the man she had been quietly leaving had been quietly watching. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The morning light came in flat and gray across the kitchen countertop. Marcus had retiled himself. He had done it during the second year of the marriage, a long weekend in July, Delia's mother visiting, so she had somewhere to be. He had mixed the grout by hand. He had laid each tile level by level and then spent the last hour on his knees pressing the grout lines smooth with his thumb. And when Delia came home, she had said it looked professionally done and kissed his cheek and moved to the refrigerator. And he had never told her that he had actually done it better than most professionals would have. His father used to say, "The work you put into something invisible is always the most honest thing about you." Marcus thought about that most mornings. He was thinking about it now, mug in both hands, watching the gray light settle into the pale blue of the kitchen wall. He was a methodical man by nature and by training. He had learned facilities management the way most men learn it, at the bottom, working maintenance for a hotel chain in Nashville at age 22. Pushing a mop and learning the building the way you learn a language, not by reading it, but by living inside it until it speaks back. By 28, he had his certification. By 31, he had been recruited to run the maintenance division of Caldwell Property Solutions in Charlotte, North Carolina, a firm that managed 14 residential and commercial properties across the Carolinas. By 33, he had been brought on as a silent equity partner by the firm's founder, an older man named Arthur Caldwell, who recognized something in Marcus that Marcus himself had not yet named. "You see the building before it breaks," Arthur had told him. "That's worth more than everything else combined." Delia Elowin was the kind of woman who made a room feel warmer just by entering it. That had been the first thing Marcus noticed about her. Not her face, though her face was striking, but the way the energy in the room at that church social in 2013 had shifted slightly toward her, like plants tilting toward a window. She had laughed at something her friend said, and Marcus had found himself walking toward her without deciding to. Their early years had been real. He believed that. He kept that belief separate from everything that came after, the way you keep a tool clean even when the job has turned. They had built a life inside a craftsman house on Alderman Street in Charlotte. Cream-colored siding and a front porch with a swing he had hung himself. They had a shared checking account, a joint mortgage, 2 cars, a dog named Crescent who had died in year 6 and left a silence neither of them had fully filled. Delia worked in pharmaceutical sales, and she was good at it. Sharp, charming, organized, the kind of woman who closed deals by making people feel chosen rather than sold to. But somewhere in the middle of year 7, something in her had made a decision that the rest of her had taken another 4 years to complete. The first signal was small. Marcus noticed it the way he noticed everything, quietly, without remark. A Friday evening in March, he had come home to find her ending a phone call as he came through the door. She had said, "Let me call you back," and slipped the phone into her pocket in a single practiced motion. And he had said hello and gone to wash his hands, and the motion had stayed with him the way a sound stays with you after the room goes quiet. He had not said anything. He was not ready to say anything yet. The second signal was the key. He had already mentioned that. What he had not mentioned was that the key was not on the kitchen counter when he left for work at 6:30 that morning. It appeared sometime between then and 5:40 when he returned, and Delia's car was in the driveway, which meant she had been home long enough to set it there, and then either forgotten about it or decided it did not matter. A man who reacted emotionally to signals made mistakes. Marcus did not react to signals. He cataloged them. He went upstairs to change out of his work clothes. He moved through the bedroom, their bedroom, 14 years of her presence in the arrangement of things. Her perfume on the right side of the dresser, her phone charger on the nightstand closest to the window, her reading glasses on the stack of books she had been working through since January. He changed into a clean shirt and jeans. He came back downstairs and started dinner. That night, Delia was warm. She talked about her week, asked about one of his properties, refilled his glass without being asked. She was good at warmth. He had loved that about her once. Now he watched it the way you watch weather through glass, present to the observation, separate from the temperature. He did not ask about the key. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, he came home an hour early because a roofing contractor had canceled. Delia's car was gone. He went inside, dropped his bag, and moved to make coffee. He noticed the recycling bin near the door had been emptied recently, which was unusual because that was always his task. He checked the kitchen trash, also emptied. He checked the bedroom. He was not sure what he was looking for. He was running his hands over the architecture of their shared life, the way he ran his hands over a building he was assessing, not looking for any one thing, just looking. He found it in the bathroom. A razor, not his. Disposable, blue handle. Tucked behind the second bottle of shampoo on the shower shelf, the bottle that was nearly empty and that Delia should have replaced 2 weeks ago. He looked at it for a long moment. He took a photograph of it where it sat. He set it back exactly as he found it. Then he went downstairs, poured his coffee, and sat at the kitchen table where he had eaten breakfast for 11 years, and he thought. He did not think with emotion. He thought the way Arthur had taught him to think about a building with a slow leak, methodically, from the source outward, tracing the pattern before you started pulling up floors. He pulled out his personal laptop. He had access to their joint bank account. He had always had access. He simply had not looked carefully in a long time, the same way you stop really looking at the walls of a room you know well. He looked now. The withdrawals began 14 months ago. Small ones first, $200 here, $150 there. The kind of thing that reads as groceries or gas in the noise of a 2-income household. But they were not random. They fell on the same days every month, sometimes twice a month. And over 14 months they had accumulated to $213,400 in transfers out of their joint account into an account whose routing number he did not recognize. His hands did not shake. He was an engineer by training, if not by title, and engineers did not curse at bad readings. They documented them. He spent the next 2 hours creating a spreadsheet. He cross-referenced dates against Delia's posted schedule, her pharmaceutical sales calendar she kept on the shared family app. He cross-referenced the amounts against the mortgage cycle, the utility cycle, the dates she had told him she was traveling for work. He found 14 instances where a withdrawal had occurred on a day she claimed to be out of town. He found 7 instances where the amount transferred matched almost exactly the cost of a specific purchase, a hotel booking, a flight, a dinner charge, that had appeared on the joint credit card in her name. She had been funding someone else's presence in their life from the account Marcus had built. By the time Delia's car pulled into the driveway that evening, he had the spreadsheet saved in 3 places. He had forwarded copies to 2 email addresses she had never seen. He had taken clear photographs of everything he had found and uploaded them to a cloud folder named, simply, Alderman. He closed the laptop before she came through the door. He moved to the kitchen and began washing the coffee mug, and when she said hello from the entryway, he said hello back, and his voice was exactly as it had always been. He had made 1 phone call before she arrived. The call lasted 45 seconds. "It's Marcus," he said. "I figured," said the voice on the other end. "When do you want to come in?" "Monday morning," he said. First available, he was done waiting without purpose. Now, he was waiting with one. Patricia Lemon Hayes had been practicing family and asset law in Charlotte for 26 years, and in that time she had seen every variation of what men and women did to each other when the architecture of a marriage began to fail. She was 61, small, with reading glasses she kept on a lanyard around her neck, and a way of speaking that reminded Marcus of a surgeon. Precise, without waste, unimpressed by drama. He laid the spreadsheet in front of her on Monday morning. He laid the photographs. He laid a printed summary he had written himself the night before, organized chronologically, with dates and amounts in the left column and his analysis in the right. She read it without speaking for 6 minutes. Then she took off her glasses and set them on the table and looked at him. "How long have you known something was wrong?" 14 months of withdrawals, he said. "I noticed a pattern about 4 days ago, and before that, general awareness? I noticed a signal in March. I waited." She nodded slowly. Waiting was right. She tapped the spreadsheet. "This routing number, do you know whose account this is?" "Not yet. We'll find out." She leaned back. "Your equity position in Caldwell Property Solutions. Does your wife know about it?" "No." Patricia looked at him steadily. "Tell me why." "When I came on as equity partner, Delia and I were in a difficult year. I kept the accounts separate as a precaution. I never got around to telling her once things improved. After a while, it just became the way things were." "The way things were," Patricia repeated, "is going to work considerably in your favor." She pulled a legal pad toward her and began to write. "North Carolina is an equitable distribution state. Separate property remains separate if it was acquired before the marriage or kept separately and not commingled. Your equity position, your Memphis account, your separate savings. If we can demonstrate these were consistently kept separate, they stay yours." She paused. "The joint account she drained is a different matter. Marital waste is provable here. We file, we document, we pursue recovery." Marcus listened. He asked 2 questions. He left with a folder Patricia's assistant had prepared. A list of documents to gather, a timeline to build, a process to follow. Some things, he had learned, were worth doing in the right order. That afternoon he drove to his mother's house off Beatty's Ford Road. Lusa Elowen was 68 and had spent 30 years working as a licensed practical nurse and another 6 years after retirement growing tomatoes in a raised bed garden she had built in her backyard with lumber Marcus had cut for her. She was not easily surprised by people's choices. She had watched too many people make too many choices across too many years to sustain the energy required for surprise. "I thought something was off about 6 months ago," she said. She was sitting across from him at her kitchen table with a glass of sweet tea he hadn't touched. "A woman who was in it for real wouldn't have been so careful about what she said around me. You never said anything. You weren't ready to hear it." She studied him. "Are you angry?" "I'm clear," he said. "Those are different things." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, your father used to say the hardest part of any repair is resisting the urge to rush it. You rush a repair, you set up the next failure. You do it right, you don't have to come back." He drove home with that sitting in his chest like ballast. By Thursday, he had 3 more pieces. His nephew Darius, 24 and sharp as a new blade, had run the routing number through a contact he had at a credit union. The account belonged to a man named Wesley Okafor, 44, a commercial real estate developer based out of Atlanta with a second residence in Charlotte. Marcus found Wesley Okafor's LinkedIn profile that evening. He found the man's company page. He found 3 news mentions in Charlotte business publications over the past 2 years. He found that Wesley Okafor had been the subject of a fraud complaint filed with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission 18 months ago. A complaint that had been settled quietly, without public resolution. He shared this with Patricia the next morning. Patricia shared it with the forensic accountant her firm kept on retainer. By Friday afternoon, the accountant had found that 3 of the transfers from the Elowens' joint account had cleared within 48 hours of deposits into a secondary account tied to Okafor's development company, a company that had no public revenue streams large enough to explain the deposits without external funding. Delia had not simply been having an affair. She had been financing it. That Friday evening, Marcus came home and made dinner. He made pasta, her favorite, with the sauce from scratch he had learned to make in their 3rd year together. He set the table. He lit a candle. When Delia came through the door and saw the table, her face opened into something that looked like gratitude, and he watched it cross her face and felt nothing except a clear, calm sense of the distance between what she saw and what he knew. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just felt like cooking." She sat across from him and talked about her week. And he listened, and the pasta was good, and the candle burned down, and the evening passed the way evenings pass when one person in the room has already decided what comes next, and the other person does not know it yet. Real power, Arthur Caldwell had told him once, operates in quiet rooms. The meeting was at Patricia's office on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Marcus had found the razor on the shower shelf. Marcus had requested that Delia be told it was a routine financial consultation, a review of their joint assets and estate planning she had been asking about for 2 years. This was accurate enough to be plausible and incomplete enough to serve his purposes. She arrived in a navy blazer, professional and composed, carrying the leather portfolio she used for client meetings. She was good at composure. He had watched her practice it for 11 years. She stopped when she saw who was in the room. Patricia, seated at the head of the conference table. Marcus, to Patricia's left. Arthur Caldwell, to Marcus's left, a man Delia had met exactly twice in 11 years of marriage. Delia's own mother, Cynthia Pearson, seated at the far end of the table, hands folded in her lap and her expression in a register Delia would not have expected. "What is this?" Delia said. "Please sit down," Patricia said. "We have some documents to review." Patricia laid the spreadsheet on the table first. Then the bank records, 14 months of them, with the transfers highlighted in yellow. Then a printed summary from the forensic accountant, 4 pages. Clean and clear and devastating in its specificity. Amounts, dates, destination accounts. The 3 instances where those funds had been traced directly to Okafor's development company. Delia's composure shifted in 3 stages. The first was confusion, performed well. The second was something closer to genuine surprise, not at the facts, but at the fact of the room. The third was the slow understanding that the ground had already shifted before she walked through the door. "Marcus," she said. "I can explain. Let me finish," Patricia said, not unkindly, but without flexibility. She slid 3 more pages across the table. "These are the asset disclosures filed in advance of separation proceedings. North Carolina law requires full disclosure of marital and separate property. Mr. Elowen has made his complete disclosure." Delia looked at the pages. She looked at the equity figures. There was a silence in the room that had the particular quality of a calculation being completed. "You own part of Caldwell," she said. It was not a question. 32%, Arthur said from his side of the table. It was the first time he had spoken. He said it the way you state the weather, factually, without drama. "Going on 7 years. She looked at Marcus. "You never told me." "No," he said. "I didn't." She looked down at the papers and back up, and Marcus watched her decide to try the other door. Her expression shifted. Her chin dropped slightly. Her voice dropped with it. "Marcus, I made mistakes. I know that. But we can talk about this privately. We don't need, my mother shouldn't be here for. He needed someone here," Cynthia Pearson said, from the end of the table. Her voice was level, and she did not look at her daughter while she said it. "I chose to come when he called, because what you did to this man was not a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. You kept records." Delia's composure completed its collapse. The performance was over. What remained was not tears exactly. It was the expression of someone who has reviewed their position and found it empty. Marcus straightened the papers in front of him. He stood. "I paid for 11 years in silence," he said. "The house, the car, the wardrobe, the vacations you photographed, the life you used as a backdrop. I paid for it because I chose to, and because I believed I was building something worth having." He paused. "I stopped choosing it 3 weeks ago. And I want you to understand that between when I stopped and when you're standing in this room, 72 hours is all it took for this to come apart. Not because I moved fast. Because I had already been building this for years, the same way I build everything." He looked at her for a moment. "The difference between us is I always knew what I was building." He picked up his folder. He nodded to Patricia, to Arthur, to Cynthia. He walked out. The door closed behind him. He did not look back. He could hear the silence of the room he had left, the shape of it, the specific quality of a space where a thing has just been made permanent. He took the elevator down. He walked out into the October morning and stood on the sidewalk for a moment with his hands in his pockets. The air was cool and the sky was white. He drove. 8 months later, Marcus Elowen was standing on the back porch of a house he had purchased and spent the winter renovating on his own time. A craftsman bungalow in the Belmont neighborhood of Charlotte, with original hardwood floors he had refinished himself, and a backyard he was in the process of putting right. The tomatoes in the raised bed he had built were splitting at the seams with their own weight. A Japanese maple he had planted in February had taken root and was beginning to show its first real growth. Not dramatic, just present, the steady kind. A woman named Celeste was inside making coffee. She was a civil engineer with the Charlotte Water Department, methodical, unhurried, with a habit of asking the second question after most people stopped at the first. She had not performed for him. She had not tried to be anything. She had sat across from him at dinner one evening 3 months ago and asked him what he was actually building next. And he had told her the truth, and she had listened to all of it, and then asked the second question. He had been surprised, and then not surprised, and then grateful in the quiet way he was grateful for things that fit correctly. Through a mutual connection, he had heard about Delia in pieces over those months. The divorce had been finalized in April, equitable distribution under North Carolina law, with marital waste accounted for and Patricia's work recovering $178,000 of the transferred funds through court-ordered repayment tied to asset division. Delia had moved to an apartment in Huntersville. She was working a territory sales position at a smaller pharmaceutical company, a step down in title and compensation from the senior role she had held. Her network, the one she had spent years cultivating through Marcus's quiet financial support of every dinner party, every charitable event, every well-maintained home, had contracted sharply. Her own sister had stopped returning calls. Wesley Okafor's development company had been suspended by the State Real Estate Commission following a full investigation. He had relocated to Atlanta. What remained of his Charlotte presence was legal and financial. Marcus heard these things the way you hear about weather in a city you used to live in, present to the information, unbothered by it, no longer in it. Celeste came out with 2 mugs and handed him one, and stood beside him, looking at the yard. "The maple's going to be something in a few years," she said. "It is," he said. They stood there together in the morning light, which was gold now, the October cold having passed into a softer season, and Marcus held the mug in both hands the way he always held a mug, and the yard was quiet. And everything in it was something he had built or was building, and it was enough, and it was his. Some things, he thought, were worth every minute of the patience it took to build them right. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.